Welcome, everyone. I'm Mariquita Solis, the live stream host of all-creatures.org. All-creatures.org was founded in 1998 by Pastor Frank Hoffman and his first wife, Mary, and launched as the pioneer website in the United States for faith based animal rights veganism. Today, led by our executive director, Tams Nicholson, we exist for all people seeking current animal rights vegan resources and offer decades of free animal rights and vegan content, including a huge repository of vegan sermons and Bible commentaries, animal rights strategies, free vegan authored books, recipes, upcoming events around the world, and the works of various vegan authors, poets, and artists. We host current sites for almost 20 vegan and animal rights organizations, including Stop Crushed, Unparalleled Suffering, and the Committee to Abolish Sports Hunting. We also maintain nearly 25 archival sites from animal rights, vegan activism of past decades. The bottom line is that we work to unite compassionate and empathetic humans across the globe from the past and present who honor the dignity of each and every creature so that all beings thrive on a flourishing planet Earth. So, thank you for joining us. Today, we are very excited to welcome Andrea McMillan. Andrea has joined our all-creatures.org team as an incoming assistant research director this August 2024. A passionate advocate for animal welfare and environmental protection, Andrea has dedicated her career to advancing the well being of all sentient animals and safeguarding our shared environmental resources. From a young age, Andrea's compassion for animals has been evident. Some of her earliest memories include rescuing unhoused cats from around her neighborhood and bringing them into her home, a mission her mother graciously supported. At 5 years old, she remembers being both horrified and disgusted when she innocently asked how hamburgers were made, avoiding them entirely for years later after being told the truth. Andrea earned her Juris Doctorate with a concentration in animal law and a master's in environmental law and policy from Vermont Law School, graduating in May of 2024. During law school, she worked for the U.S. Humane Society's Legislative Fund and the Farmed Animal Advocacy Legal Clinic, where she pursued better outcomes for farm animals at the federal level through government transparency and enforcement initiatives. She also created Vermont's law school's first ever animal law research database, a comprehensive resource for attorneys and the public on key animal issues at the federal, state, and international level. Before law school, Andrea devoted her time to volunteering at various animal shelters around the Southwest before making the Northeast her new home. Andrea has been a vegan ever since watching Cowspiracy in 2016. She loves to cook and teach herself how to veganize classic non-vegan meals that her whole non-vegan family loves. So, y'all, let's welcome Andrea and make sure that you give StreamYard permission to use your name, and we'd love your questions and comments. So welcome, Andrea. I'm excited to have you here and to welcome you as a part of all-creatures.org's team.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mariquita. It's great to be here, and I'm really looking forward to talking with you today.
Well, we don't always get to talk to someone with legal expertise, so I'm very excited. So let's start off with a big question. Yeah, and I read that you became a vegan in, I think it was 2016.
That's right.
Okay. And so, can you tell us about your transition to veganism?
Yeah, so it feels so silly to say now that I'm fully immersed in this world, but pre-2016, I really had no knowledge about what our U.S. food system actually looked like. It was watching Cowspiracy from I believe it was assigned in a college course that I had my freshman year, and I just realized how massive of an environmental impact that eating animals was causing. And I've always felt really passionate about environmental issues. And even at this point, I was still blissfully unaware of all of the egregious welfare issues that farmed animals experienced, other than obviously their unnatural deaths. It really wasn't until the pandemic in 2019 when I had a lot more time on my hands, like we all did, and I started reading books that I'd bought for many years, and I'd never gotten around to reading them, and it was Gail Eisen's book, Slaughterhouse, that really opened my eyes to just how egregious the welfare issues were that were going on inside the average factory farm and slaughterhouse. And this was around the time that I really started seeking out undercover investigative stories from organizations like Animal Outlook and Mercy for Animals. And it was after learning about the horrific abuse that takes place on U.S. farms that I decided that was what I wanted to pursue as a career, to change that system. And I never imagined in a million years that I would ever become a lawyer. um, but I have the pandemic to thank for that, I guess. And that was when I decided I was going to go to school for environmental law and animal law. And that is how I made the big move from Arizona all the way to Vermont, because Vermont Law School is one of the very few schools that specialize in environmental and animal law specifically. So,
Wow. Well, you're very brave. Even reading the Slaughterhouse book, that scares me right there. So I'm sure, yeah. And that you took action is wonderful. Definitely, because a lot of times we get trapped, but it's a journey for everyone. So when you became vegan, what did your family and friends think?
yeah, I had very little support at the beginning. I actually watched Cowspiracy with a close friend of mine, and right after that movie, we both made the commitment to one another that we had to be vegan from there on out. And it was something that we at the time we said we were going to do together. And that friend that I had lasted about a week doing as a vegan. So I got used to being the only vegan that I knew. Um, and I was really quite lucky. I went to school in northern Arizona in Flagstaff, and my school had so many vegan options in the town and on campus. And I know that there's a lot of schools and a lot of students that don't have those same resources that I thought really made it quite easy to be vegan. And it's amazing to me just how far vegan food has come even from then, even less than 10 years ago. Um, but my friends and family at the time, I mean, I was constantly getting made fun of by them. I mean, so many times I would come home for Thanksgiving and they would be like, "What? You don't eat turkey? I know you don't eat steak, but you don't eat even turkey?" And and then it became, "Okay, I know you don't eat turkey, but you don't eat fish?" So, a lot of educating, even after I thought that I'd educated my friends and family on it, still got a lot of those questions. And it's only been quite recently, I think now that my friends and family have seen that I've fully committed my career to this, that the jokes have stopped and they've started taking me seriously and knowing that there needs to be some more veggies for the holiday meals and stuff for me. And I definitely, I think, have made an impact on my friends and family in that way. And it was a long time coming, though. It was many years of kind of having what I thought were the same conversations that just recently I feel like I've finally been able to break through to them and have them understand the reasons that I do this. So
Well, that's wonderful to hear that you stood strong, and I loved your attitude about it. Just keeping on the path, and now they're understanding, and that's the way that the journey is again, right? So, so what would you say? How does the peace of not eating creatures manifest in your life today?
Yeah, I would say it gives me a small sense of justice in knowing that I'm not one of the ones that is contributing to the systemic torture and greed of the U.S. animal-based food system. I'm always really proud to support vegan brands, and I hope that I inspire others to live vegan. Although I've yet to officially convert most of my friends and family to a vegan lifestyle, I'm proud to say that I'm responsible for a massive reduction in their of animals in their lives and thereby saving even more animals. So
Yes, and that's wonderful. So, what's your most memorable experience in your on your vegan journey?
I would say one of my most memorable experiences on my vegan journey was probably during law school, actually. It was when I read a story by a law professor called Who the Judge Ate for Breakfast. And as someone who, hopes to one day pursue impactful litigation that enhances animal rights, it was a really stark reminder of the irony in attempting to convince a judge that an animal deserves respect and deserves rights, while this same judge likely ate animals for breakfast that very morning that they're hearing your case. Um, and the paper kind of explores the uphill battle that animal advocates face in a system maintained by people who are more inclined to render opinions based on societal norms instead of meaningfully considering persuasive arguments. Um, the professor that wrote this paper, it's Matthew Liebman. He also discusses how kind of our recognition of that powerlessness helps us empathize better with the animals too, which I really appreciated. And I think that facing some of these hard truths head on has empowered me to be a stronger advocate for animals and really come to terms with the fact that the ideal world that myself and most vegans hope for, one where animals are respected and not exploited, is radical to some people, and that's okay. Throughout history, there have been thousands of radical ideas that over time become mainstream, and today we talk about how we can't believe humans ever used to do this or that. Um, and this might be a somewhat pessimistic viewpoint that not every vegan can relate to, but I think understanding where the majority of the world is at in their thinking today makes our movement stronger for the future. And if anything, this fact should empower us to show up even louder for the animals who need our voice.
Well, that's good, definitely good advice. And I mean, to accept where we are, and I mean, to continue the hope like you're doing and to take action. So, and I want to welcome JJ and Lee for joining us. Thanks for watching, and let us know if you have any questions for us. What would you say to someone who is very depressed and says, I can't ever take action like Andrea? Well, I mean, I can't even get out of bed.
I would say if that's the state that you're at right now, you need to take a step back because you are no good to yourself, to the movement, to animals if you're not prioritizing your own needs and your own mental health. I mean, the only way that we can show up 100% and be our best selves is if we're putting ourselves first. And so I think if you're and I've been there myself. I think a lot of vegans can relate to that where you feel like you're kind of the only one standing on this mountain shouting the truth and no one's listening. Um, and I think what's been the most beneficial thing for me when I feel like that is to unplug completely. I mean, that's my sign that okay, I've taken too much of this in, and it's really weighing so heavy on my heart that, I can't be my best self right now, and to be my best self for the animals, I need to prioritize me right now until I'm feeling better to come back to it.
That's definitely great advice to always take care of ourselves, we have to because, like you say, we're not going to be any good for ourselves or anyone else. So, I do have a question for you about I'm recently taking a course, and they're talking about corporations having rights versus like the sequoia trees or the environment. What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so, it's it's a weird thing in animal law where so many people that we're having these arguments with about how can we say that animals deserve rights that while the law treats them as property in most states, um, when we've allowed corporations to have legal personhood for like decades now, and we've been giving legal personhood and legal rights to inanimate objects like streams and bodies of water and national forests and stuff like that. But a living, breathing, sentient animal, we're having this disconnect on, and it's so strange. There has been a little bit of movement in that area, but I think one of the things is animal lawyers as a whole is that we have to be creative. There the path has already been laid for us with some of these examples, like that we have already given rights to inanimate objects, and there's absolutely no rational reason why those same rights can't be applied to a living, breathing animal. Um, so I think so much of animal law is finding those connections like that and making those arguments and hopefully getting them before a judge that listens to us.
Sorry, I'm trying to mute it. So I felt like I had some background noise.
Oh, that's
So
good.
thank you for that because it's hard to wrap my head around that. And I'm sure it's hard for the audience to wrap their heads around that too, for sentient beings not to have rights, but corporations too. So, what can lay people do to get involved in the AR animal rights movement from a legal or policy standpoint? Because a lot of times we don't even know where to start. It's like I would say I don't know the law, and so how can I help?
Yeah, I think there are so many ways for people to get involved. So, number one, just for people to be in the know and make sure that they're hearing about timely issues affecting animals, I would really suggest looking up um, Brooks Animal Law Institute. I am actually signed up for their newsletter. I believe it's called their Animal Law Digest. And it's a weekly email newsletter that they send out where they detail all of the federal, state, local um, happenings in the laws, whether there's good legislation, bad legislation that's affecting animals, the regulations, and they also discuss court cases that are happening, and they follow those through. So when they introduce one week, they'll give you the updates as they're happening each week afterwards, and that's a really great way for you to just I mean, it's how can anyone know what's happening in all 50 states at one time, you know? But that is by far my favorite resource just to know what's happening, number 1. I think that's the biggest battle. I think there's so many times that there are issues that people would really care about if they just knew about them. And it's not most people don't even have enough hours in the day to do that kind of 50 state federal, research like that. So I would definitely suggest signing up for Brooks Animal Law Digest. That's just once a week email. So it's really not going to blow up your inbox or anything like that. Um, and then to get more involved beyond that, once you have the background knowledge, I would suggest commenting on proposed regulations. I mean, I think a lot of people forget about regulations. I think a lot of times everyone is always thinking, well, I know I know that my senators are pushing this bill and I've written to my senator and I've called them and I've told them that I don't support it, but I don't know what that's getting me. And the senators, even though they're supposed to be accountable to their constituents, they aren't always, right? And maybe it's impossible to please all of their constituents or whatever the reason may be. But any person can comment on proposed regulations that the federal executive agencies are putting out. And if there are enough comments expressing a certain viewpoint, then the agency is legally required to address those. And if if the agency chooses not to listen to those recommendations, there's enough of them to where it's substantial, the agency has to explicitly lay out the reasons why they chose to not follow those recommendations, which I think is really powerful, and it lays a really good um, trail of evidence for a future lawsuit. Because if the agency says, well, we just didn't agree with them because it didn't support the current science. And then a year later, a new study comes out that shows that, well, the science has, we were wrong about the science a year ago. Here's here's the new science that shows all these recommendations that were right at the time. Um, that's a lawsuit right there. That is grounds for the agency to go back and take another look, and the court will assess whether the agency actually gave that like an adequate teasing out, really. And if they didn't, then the agency has to go back and rework the regulation until it's rational. And I think that can be really powerful. And then if all else fails, and the agency has published its proposed regulation, you've commented on it, and you've had all of your friends comment on it, and the agency is deciding to publish their final regulations, any person, well, before those regulations get finalized and published, the agency is required to send them to the Office of Management and Budget, the OMB, and that federal agency is like a neutral federal agency. Every single final regulation has to go through them before it's published, and any person has the ability to petition the OMB for a meeting. And during that meeting, you can say, "This is a terrible final regulation. Please, please, please don't let the agency publish this. I mean, you're our last hope," kind of thing. And a lot of times the agency will be on that call with you. And that's kind of one last great way to um, get your voice on the record and get your comments public. And they might not, agree with you and take your course of action, but they are required legally to listen to you, which I think is still really powerful.
Yes, that's very good to know. I have another question about the animals in the sea. And I've watched Blackfish and everything. And so is that so those practices are still legal? I'm hoping you're going to say no, that it's not okay to go take animals from the sea and put them into captivity or in the wild, like animals in Africa, and bring them to zoos. I mean, what's going on here?
Yeah, I will be honest, I it's not my expertise, marine life. So I don't know that I can give you a good answer on this, that's gonna be satisfying. I think it's very dependent on probably where the animals are coming from. If we have some sort of international treaty, it depends on the animal itself. Um, but I have seen Blackfish. Blackfish is pretty horrifying. And, yeah, I don't wanna say a wrong answer, so I think I'm gonna have to deflect just because it's not really,
Well, that
I
is a good answer. I mean, what you gave me was a good answer that because I knew nothing. So, so
okay.
yes, thank you. And so, what do you feel are the biggest advancements made in animal law in recent years?
Yeah, I think even just so I graduated law school in May, and, even in the 3 years that I was in law school, I watched animal law grow before my eyes. I mean, when I started law school, I decided to get my master's in environmental law, and I filled my master's courses with animal specific classes. And by my third year, by my last year, they created a new master's in masters of animal protection and policy. And I was a couple years too late to get that master's, but the fact that that even exists now, I think is really amazing. And I think one of the biggest advancements that we as animal lawyers should be really proud of is that the Supreme Court heard an animal law case, which I never thought that I would be alive to see the day, really. But yeah, and then how amazing that the Supreme Court actually was on our side for it. I mean, that was National Pork v. Ross, and I want to say 2 years ago now, where it was California Prop 12, where the citizens of California passed a ballot initiative. So they bypassed the legislator and the governor and all of that, and the people of California themselves said, "We, if you are going to sell an animal product in our state, we want that animal to live in a cage that is big enough for them to stand up, sit down, move their arms." I mean, so basic, like, humane requirements, but still, the fact that that wasn't required before is insane, and, I think it's really amazing that that was done by the citizens themselves, you know, that and not every state has a ballot initiative like that. California is one of the few, but, for that to go all the way up to the Supreme Court against some huge industries. I mean, the big ag industry in our country, they are backed by so much money, the best lawyers, and, to have the Supreme Court agree that, nope, if California wants humane animal products in their state, then California has the legal right to impose that on any industry or any big ag, big farm industry member that wants to sell those products in their state. And so um, I think that was really amazing. I had to read that opinion like 3 times after it came out because we had all just me and, the people in my law school there, we'd been talking about it for weeks. We knew it was gonna come out at some point, and I think all of our minds were blown that it actually ended up in our favor. But yeah.
Well, that's very exciting. And how many students were in your classes? I mean, how many? I think we're probably as vegans 1 to 3%, if we're lucky 3%. How many students were in your classes?
Yeah, it was small. Um, but I would say probably like 20, 25 that I
Okay,
graduated with that, were pursuing a career in animal law, so and I
all right.
didn't go to a very small school, I should say. I graduated with 170 kids, so 20 out of 170 is not too bad of odds, I suppose.
No, that's pretty good. I like that. Well, that's wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
So, do you think the current laws provide enough opportunity for animal lawyers to adequately pursue animal protection cases?
Yes and no. Um, there are definitely so many improvements that could be made, even just in the way that so many states define the word animal. I mean, there are anti-cruelty statutes in almost all 50 states, but the way that they apply is so different between the states because they're very wordsmithy with the way that they define animal in some states. I mean, sometimes it's like a definition that's like a paragraph long that you gotta work through the legalese to even understand what what this law even or who this law even applies to. Um, so there are some states that are better than others. There are some states that fully exclude farmed animals from the definition of animal, and provide hardly any sort of statutes that protect them. Um, But I think that there are still so many states where, animal lawyers have the legal backing to bring anti-cruelty cases in those states, and maybe that's just because the legislator hasn't there haven't been enough animal advocates to bring those kinds of cases for the legislator to think, "Oh, well, maybe we should remove farmed animals before these animal lawyers fill the courts up with all these cases." But, I think that there's still a lot of room for creativity through those few states that do define animal more broadly, and, another aspect of a lot of states is that, they kind of have this general blanket prohibition on, well, if it's a they usually say, like, a generally accepted farming practice or husbandry practice, then it's exempt from these cruelty statutes entirely. And I think what a lot of organizations are starting to realize now is that we do have an argument to make that, uh, I mean, I don't wanna get, like, too down in the weeds of it, but that, you know, beating an animal that isn't, walking in the line to its death, that's not a generally accepted husbandry practice. That's going above and beyond, the job, um, and that there are still, like, ways for us to say that, just because they've been doing it like this forever doesn't mean that that's generally accepted and shouldn't be accepted. So, room to improve, but also a lot of ways to be creative within our current laws too, I think.
Definitely. And what about the penalties? How do we get stronger penalties for, let's say, dog fighting? And now, is cockfighting, is that illegal now in all the states? I'm not sure.
I think it's state specific. I'm not
Okay,
sure if it's illegal in all
which
the states. Yeah,
incredible. It's
and
incredible.
I know, yeah. It's like
But
gambling, kind of, like, that's pretty state specific too, so
and that's funny that it's, I don't even think of it as gambling. I mean, that is tied to gambling. The yeah,
yeah,
I don't,
that's
you know.
true.
So, but the penalties, how, I mean, are they becoming harsher throughout the years for like dog fighting and punish, and these travesties, just simple chaining your dog 24/7. I mean, I don't even know. I guess that's still legal in some places. It's terrible, but we all want to see harsher penalties. What can we? Is there anything we can do about that?
Yeah, I think so that is with the legislator. That is petitioning your representatives, and so many representatives have, like, open coffee hours is what some of them call them, where you can, anyone can go once a month and meet with their senator, and, we need them to change the laws, and then we need the judge to apply the maximum penalties, because even when we have a case that makes it through, that the judge agrees with us, yes, this is a very clear violation of the law, this person deserves some sort of penalty, it's still the judges who are like, oh, well, it's only an animal and they only did it to one animal, or, whatever the reason is. The judges have so much discretion. But if we could change the laws and lessen that discretion, to increase these penalties, to a point that's actually meaningful to and I have seen some interesting stuff about, um, kinda like a little bit of restorative justice almost, where, having people that have, been involved in an animal cruelty case that, have to go and spend some time on a farm sanctuary, or volunteer their community service time in an animal shelter. And I think that there is power in that. Um, I know that might scare some people, like, "Oh my gosh, we don't want these people that are doing these horrible things to animals to go and be involved in with animals," but, I think when they're supervised and stuff, it gives them a new appreciation for animals, and I think that there is power in that, but to get back to your original question, we've gotta petition the legislators to write stronger laws, to make the minimum penalties still severe, and then cross our fingers that the judges agree because there is no way to convince a judge unless the law is written. The judge has to apply the law. Um, but I think if we can show that the legislators and the people fully support these maximum penalties be applied, that the judge will have no choice but to follow them.
Well, that's very good advice. So we need to hit up our legislatures, and I love what you said about the coffee time, and we all need to do that. Just take one, just set a day aside, make an appointment, and go. And that
Yeah,
would be very powerful if we all did it. So
'cause they
everybody
work for us,
listening,
even though it doesn't feel like it, but they do.
right? All right. Well, how do you try and educate others about veganism and animal rights?
Yeah, so I would say one of the, um, strongest things that I do that I've actually think is making some sort of impact is through my social media. And I try to use it in a way that I think will make the people that I'm not particularly close to listen and be somewhat horrified. One particular story comes to mind where it was, and it really wasn't even an animal rights video, but it was a video of this biologist who took a little tiny sliver of a hot dog and put it under a microscope, and you can just see the plastic, the worms, the hairs. I mean, just how disgusting it is when it's amplified like that. And I had so many people from school, I mean, not close friends even, from high school and college that I hadn't talked to in years that commented on that story that I reposted and said, "Oh my gosh, I am never eating a hot dog again." And that made me really happy, you know, and obviously it's not for the right reasons, but, I think that there's so much out there already. If you can repost it and you have a pretty, uh, big community on social media, that is a really powerful and non-preachy kind of way to get people to just educate themselves, and, I do definitely post more animal rights stuff, but, you know, it's funny that those aren't the stories that people are responding to, "Oh, I'm never eating a hamburger again," but, I do think there's creative ways to make people care, like the hot dog example, and, I was very pleasantly surprised. I had probably 5 people that, I know are not vegans and maybe never will be, but that were, "Oh my gosh, I'm never eating a hot dog again," and I thought that that was a win, so
I think it's a win too, right? However, we can get people to eat less animals is a win. So, so as you're doing this, and I can see where this can be overwhelming. How do you prioritize your own mental health?
yeah, I think kind of tying into our conversation, previously, you've gotta check in with yourself, and, there was one project I remember working on where, it was it was kind of like an evidence gathering thing that I needed to work on for, one of these cases that I was helping out with, the farmed animal advocacy clinic at my school, where I really just needed to know what a rendering facility looked like, to be able to adequately and effectively describe, um, to people that don't know what that process is, and, it was so gruesome. I remember towards the end, I was, like, flinching at the photos, and, I remember talking to my team and being like, I need to do something else. I was, like, crying nearly telling them that, and, I think the nice thing about animal rights advocates and vegans is that, we are kind of a compassionate bunch, and we have a lot of empathy for, humans and animals, and being in this community, whenever I've prioritized my mental health in that way, it's always been received so well and with so much understanding, and, yeah, they all agreed with me that it was not only best for me, but best for the work we were doing, best for, the outcome that we wanted, that, my strengths would be stronger on the writing end. Someone else do the evidence gathering, someone take over this role because I'm not gonna be able to do anything if I keep doing this. Um, and yeah, I think knowing when you need to unplug is really one of the best things you can do. I think continuing to immerse yourself when you're already feeling really low, you're only gonna make yourself feel lower. And, listening to yourself. You know better than anyone when you're at 100% and when you're not. And when you're not, you're really no good to anyone or the animals.
Yeah, that's very true. Listening to yourself and stepping back, like we talked about before. Um, well, one time I was at the park and I saw this man screaming at this little boy and screaming at this dog. It was terrible, and I yelled at him, "You can't, you can't hit these animals. You know, you can't hit the dog, and you can't." He wasn't hitting the child, but and I felt so hopeless and helpless. Of course, I called the police, and I don't even know if the police would have done it. He said, "This is my dog, and I can do whatever I want."
Mm.
And it was sickening because I know both of them were abused. And right now, I think, I mean, what could I have done other than call the police right in that moment? Maybe I could have gotten a license plate, but I don't even know if that. So I've also, speaking of that, I also know I've heard stories of abuse where I don't have enough evidence and just I know it's hearsay. And that almost seems like it goes into the violence with children and things where there's not enough legal evidence. But what's your advice there if you're witnessing something and you don't know what to do?
Yeah, that is a really tough situation to be in, especially when, like you said, you had the police come and they didn't help you, and the guy says, "This is my dog, I have the right to do it." But, on the other hand, I feel like I've been in situations where I look back afterwards and I think, "Why didn't I say anything? Why?" And it just eats me alive. And so I think, um, even just for yourself, so you can sleep at night, that we should always, always, always take those opportunities, because I can even think of some where I'm like, "Oh, I still, have a regret that I didn't say something at the time, and now I can't do anything about it." Um, and so even if we don't know the outcome, I think it's still really, really powerful to speak up. And even if, say, you in this same situation, you saw this man with his dog and his son, or and you spoke up and no one else around you spoke up, and maybe they were too scared, maybe they'll speak up the next time. Maybe they'll think, well, I saw that one woman speak up, and maybe that the police officer came and they didn't do anything, but if she can do it, I think I can do it too. And I'm sure you didn't have any negative repercussions from that. But I think living as an example, it can inspire others to think that the next time they're in that situation, they might have this same regret where, I should have stood up next to Marakita and I should have agreed with her that, yeah, why are you doing that? You can't do that. And that will get them to speak up the next time. And I'd like to think that even though you said like that situation didn't end up being very positive and nothing really got done, I would think that the little boy appreciated it. I'm sure that his father, whoever that person was, that he had that relationship to, I'm sure the little boy was bothered by it. And I think that it's really powerful for that little boy to even see, well, there are still good people in the world. I thought that this was wrong. This is the only viewpoint that I see, but now I see that no, this is bothering strangers too. And um yeah, even though it's not the outcome that we want, I do think that there a lot of good still comes from doing stuff like that.
Well, I think you're right, definitely. And it just, if, when I think about it, I thought, wow, I was brave, but I don't think it's even about bravery. In the moment, you're just like taken aback. It's like, this can't be happening. And I don't know. But I was actually going to say how brave you are and what a strong voice you have, Andrea. And were you always like that as a little girl? Did you always speak up for others?
Um, it's funny. I feel like I never thought of myself as brave, but when the time always came, I would feel this compulsion to seek justice. And kind of a silly example, but I remember one time in high school, one of my very close friends who was just valedictorian, so smart, worked so hard, 5.0, got in a car accident one night and had to bring her car to the shop and didn't and left her backpack in the car. And the teacher was going to like fail her the next day because she hadn't brought this one paper. And she says, I got in a car accident, blah, and the teacher says, I don't care. And it was, I feel like I kind of blacked out when I did it, but at the time I shot up and I said, this is my friend who would never in a million years do anything that would affect her school. She cares so much about school. She works so hard. How dare you? This is not fair. And the teacher, it might have been the fact that I rarely spoke up, but the teacher was like, okay, you're right. We'll give her another day. And so I am lucky that, like, one of the most memorable times that I remember myself seeking justice in that way, like, I actually received it. And maybe that gave me a big head to think that all of my, future endeavors were going to be like that. But yeah, I never imagined myself being a lawyer, that's for sure. I think I just realized that, there's so much atrocities committed against animals in our country and all over the world, and the law felt like the best way to make lasting change and systemic change, because I felt like I could only educate so much, and I needed something a little more powerful to back me up, so, yeah.
Well, you've really come a long way. And what about if there was a little kids watching, right? What would you tell them? The little kids that say, "I want to be like her." what would you What would you say to those little children?
Um, I would say you 100% can. Um, there are so many ways for you to get involved and pursue your passions. And, you don't have to have a degree in anything specific to go to law school. You can get a degree in whatever interests you the most and just pass your LSAT, which isn't too hard. I did not do too hot on my LSAT and I got into plenty of law schools. So I would just say, I feel like a couple years ago, lawyers and they used to have this like persona that like it was so hard to get into law school and they must be really, really smart. And now that I'm a lawyer, I don't feel that way at all. I feel like it's really possible for anyone. And if you pursue your passions, then the pathways will just open up for you, really. You'll find people that will help you and guide you, and, the doors will just start to open.
Well, I still think, wow, you have to be very smart. But okay, I'm hearing you because you see those big giant books that people have to study to be lawyers, and you see them just staying up late and just going through the books and books. I can't even wrap my head around that.
You know, it's funny when you're in law school though. Like, it's funny the people that I went to law school with thinking like, "Oh, we used to, you know, I don't know, we would go to the bars Friday nights, and now I know that they're gonna be working for the US government." That's so crazy. I see these, like, 2 dichotomous sides of them, but so many of us, I mean, we're, like, doing our reading on the way to class. It is so much reading, it's so much reading, but we're also just, like, getting by just like everyone else, and, there's a lot of times that we didn't do the reading, and we still did fine. So, yeah.
Okay, so we can do it, y'all, everybody listening. And I'm glad you answered the question about the undergraduate, right? So you don't
Yeah.
have to. Perfect. Um, so where would you like to be, let's say in 20 years? Where do you see yourself?
In 20 years, I would love to be working at some sort of nonprofit, working solely on animal issues and hopefully pursuing high impact litigation cases that, hold animal abusers and those that profit off of animal abuse accountable. And I would like that to be higher up in the industry than it currently is. It feels like there's a lot of instances right now where the justice that and sometimes it's the only justice that we can seek, but the justice that we're seeking is someone is chalked up to that is one bad apple, and they're like the bottom of the pyramid. Meanwhile, everyone above them has signed off on that practice, and they fully know that it's happening. I would like to see myself working on cases that really target the people up top, that make them accountable, and they makes it so that they're not able to just say, "Oh, I didn't know that was going on. That's that one bad apple at the bottom. I had no idea," because the fact is they do know. They're complicit in it. It is a part of the model, and they're profiting off it. So, I would love to be involved doing something like that.
Well, yes, I would love to see you doing too. So yeah, when you talk about things like that, I think about these big corporations, and sometimes I think there's just no way that we can go up against them, but there is a way.
Yeah, I mean, so much of animal law is being creative, and, what we're doing is pretty novel already. I mean, we're having to kinda, pave our own path here, but, it's been done before. I mean, I'm sure 100 years ago, no one thought a corporation's never gonna be legally recognized. I mean, maybe they would've if they were thinking about the money, I don't know. But, yeah, I think there's so many ways to be creative, and that, I don't think we can ever say never, you know? It hasn't happened yet, but that certainly doesn't mean it will never happen.
Right. And what about the piglet case? Was it because the piglets that were taken out of the site, out of the factory farm, and I mean they were taken by the animal activists, and they got off the hook? Was it because the pigs, that the life of a piglet is so minimal?
Oh my gosh, I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, I think that's why, and I think, that's really, I mean, it's good in a way, but it's sickening in another way. I mean, the value of an animal's life, um, and that's one thing you're working on here, is really working to change these laws and to change legislation for animals so their lives are valued and they are seen as sentient beings. And my goodness, they're as valuable as corporations, which again, going back to that, makes me sick.
I know. Yeah, it's all about money, and it is really sad that I think that so many people have come to look at animals as a commodity just to, within their own brains, rationalize their exploitation of them, whether that's eating them, wearing them, doing a carriage ride on a vacation, like silly things like that. But I think I think we're coming a long way with changing people's perceptions. There's still so many the majority of people's perceptions need changing. But yeah, I think that's one of our biggest problems is having people finally wake up and make that mental switch that this is a living, breathing thing. Like this, how can we a chair is property. There are so many differences between a chair and a living, breathing, sentient being. Um, but I was one of those people when I was, like, before college, before learning, just so much, maybe I wasn't as bad as thinking that animals were a chair, but there was a switch, I think as many vegans have, where you're like, "Oh my gosh, how could I have been so blind?" And now I can never go back now that I know, and so, there's still a lot of education to be done, but it is a switch that we need to change in a lot of people still.
Yes, definitely. And I want to remind everyone now to not to forget to go to www.all-creatures.org to check out the hundreds of thousands of pages of free resources updated daily, 7 days a week without break. Or sign up for our weekly newsletter. Be sure to search vegan churches on our site to find vegan faith based resources near you. And if you know of a resource not on our list, please reach out to our executive director, Tams, at all-creatures.org. And y'all, please subscribe to this wonderful channel. And I want to ask you, as we're coming to the end of our time, Andrea, about the link at the bottom. Can you let us know about that?
Yeah. So the link at the bottom is a research guide that I created when I was a law student last year. And it is a comprehensive list of federal, state, international research sources where you can go just to really dive deep into the animal issues to figure out um, what the anti-cruelty statutes are for your state. When just for you to know if you see something that you think is illegal, you can find it there. And I think that's a great second stop after you sign up for the Brooks Animal Law Digest, because that can kind of give you the most timely issues, and then you can go and do your own research and dive deeper into it and see if there's certain things that you can pick out yourself that, well, does my legislator know this? Or this would be a great comment on this new proposed regulation that I just found out is coming out because it was on my Brooks Animal Digest newsletter. And so, yeah, there's so many resources on there. Feel free to check it out. It's not, I know it's associated with the law school, but you really don't have to be a law student or lawyer to understand it and get valuable use out of it. And it's all animal specific as well.
Wonderful. Well, this has been very informative, and we all need to check out the Brooks resource guide and the link that you have here for us. And I'm just I feel so blessed that you're speaking up for animals, and you are very well spoken, and what a great representative you are for us, and especially all-creatures.org. We're lucky to have you, Andrea.
Yeah, I'm so lucky to be surrounded by so many wonderful animal advocates. I am the lucky one, I think.
Well, y'all, I want to thank JJ and Lee for watching, and everyone who's watching on the replay. Definitely reach out to us if you have any questions, because we're here to help. And I am again thankful for everyone here, and especially to Andrea. So thank you so much for your wisdom and your caring heart.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me, Marakita. It's been so nice talking with you.
All right. Well, bye bye, y'all. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.